All right, so as we talked about, we're taking a look now at visibility or observability of what's happening in the network environment. We're talking a lot about how we're using cloud services to optimize connections for our end users who happen to be gaining access or going to applications that happen to live in the cloud. And clearly the point of that is to give a better overall performance, reduce costs, those kinds of things, versus private line services that have been built forever. But one of the trade-offs of all of this is as you move away from having your own private line services with your equipment to a cloud as your center of the universe model, is you lose visibility of what's going on. Right? You no longer can pop into the switches and take a look at what's happening. Right? It's all in the cloud, and it knows exactly what's happening. So our solution part of SASE, clearly we think that providing that visibility back to end users is critical to any SASE solution. And so I'm going to show a couple of examples of how we're doing that. So here's a first example. I have a remote access user who experiencing some problems accessing pages. And even if you didn't get a call from the help desk to say what's going on, landing on a page about what's happening here and looking at an experience score metric, we can actually see at this particular time slice something happening unusual, right? If you take a look at this GitHub location, 0% experience, and in particular Ronaldo, who's got a 61% experience, is having a bad day. You can see there are connection issues here between Ronaldo and GitHub. So if I want to take a quick look at what's happening with Ronaldo and going to that GitHub location, I can click in the experience score agent and I can see a quick visualization, high-level overview of what's happening with this particular flow of data. I can see the computer, Ronaldo's MacBook Pro, and he's connecting to a Wi-Fi. And you notice the quality is at 50%. That connection could potentially be the problem. But if you look at the gateway he's going to, we have a loss of 0%. So kind of lets us eliminate right away that it's a Wi-Fi problem. I'm not losing anything. My latency is 6 milliseconds, so that doesn't seem to be the problem. Looking at the PC itself, right, I can take a look. I've got some information about the computer down here provided very quickly. Potentially a slow performance issue or a bad day, bad performance could be because of a high CPU or overused memory. But if I take a look at this, as memory is only 68% used, CPU is only 28% used. Kind of working away from that not being the problem either. But somewhere along the path, you can see this link here, we get to this visited site of GitHub, and we have a loss of 70%. Right? So something is going on along this path, and now we're moving out of the realm of what we control typically into the cloud. How can we view and isolate and figure out what the problem is that's causing this particular issue? All right, so let's dig into this a little more. I have this experience score. I want to take a look at Ronaldo, and I want to take a look at Ronaldo going to GitHub. So let me go ahead and add a couple of filters here so we make sure we know what we're actually searching for problem-wise. Let me look at Ronaldo. Add a filter for him, and let me add a filter for GitHub. Oops, let me search on it, GitHub. All right, so we've got a couple of filters in place, and we can see, looking down here, that's where we're looking at those errors. And we're going to take a look at the network. If I take a look at the network, I actually get a path visualization down here. And since I've isolated it down to Ronaldo, I'm going and accessing GitHub, we can see all the flows that particular flow would utilize. We see lots of hops along the way, and we even get some red circles highlighted here. Red circles, obviously they're being highlighted because either we've got a loss of greater than 10% or a length of day greater than 100 milliseconds. We have none highlighted, so these look to be all issues because our forwarding loss is greater than 10%. So, and that's the metric we were looking at up here anyway. So how do I figure out where the real problem is? Where's the biggest issue on these particular this particular link? I can actually visualize a little deeper what's happening within our space. And I roll back a few hops along the way. I can get to a point where I can see we've got something happening here, these 8 nodes in the NTT Americas. And if I click on that, I can expand out a little bit and see what's going on. Well, right here we see this red circle. Red circle. I'm going to highlight over this and take a look. What's happening here? Well, you notice this, the forwarding loss here is 67%. We've got a problem. The network is NTT America, happening in Amsterdam. And look how quickly we're able to get to a problem identification where the issue is, right? It wasn't his home network. It wasn't the gateway he was coming through. It wasn't GitHub itself, right? There was somewhere along the path we saw that packet loss, and very quickly, with a few clicks drilling down, we're able to identify exactly where the issue is and who the culprit is. And so this is a way of basically getting that visibility back into the entire network to find out where the problem is. Some service like this could be, sold to your customers, or you could sell it to your customers to help them gain that edge of identifying issues and going back to get a quicker resolution, because data can be shared and pointed directly to where the problem is. All right, one other thing I wanted to show here is let's take a look at the SD-WAN connection, right? SD-WAN, now we have connections that ride over circuits. So circuits could be private line, but they could also be the internet, right? How do I gain that visibility under poor performing circumstances to isolate where a problem might be occurring? Here's an SD-WAN page. I'm looking at basically the overlay in this case, looking at page load times. And we can see we had a problem here where we had some latency going on. You can see right here under the page load, right, high level, and I can take a look at some of the issues going on here with these page load times getting higher and higher. So let me take a look. We can take a look at the network to see what's going on. Can we figure anything out from here about what's happening with the network? Well, first note, it's not a packet loss issue if I take a look, but it is latency. So we're not losing packets, we're having latency. Path visualization, similarly to what we looked at before, this is the overlay, will show us kind of a similar story. I've got multiple paths going from sources to that particular sites, and I see one with a red line. And here, since it's the overlay, I don't know exactly what's happening here because I'm looking at the overlay itself, and then I can't see the underlying devices in this particular picture. But I do see that I've got a delay of 216 milliseconds in here, somewhere along the path. All right, so let's take a look at the underlay. We've got another analysis going here that is taking a look at the underlay itself, right? The same problem area here. Again, looking at latency. And we see that overview, latency very high on the overview again. And I'm going to take a look at the path visualization as we see it for the underlay. 4 agents again going to a site. And now what we're doing though is we're going to the router that terminates that SD-WAN connection so we can see what's happening inside of the underlay. Again, we will highlight, a forwarding loss of greater than 10%. None of them are experiencing that. A link delay of greater than 100 milliseconds. Well, we got one link experiencing that. We knew it was a latency issue. How do I go ahead and figure out where that problem occurs? Well, I can actually take a look. Hovering over, we can see that forwarding delay is 197 milliseconds, high up there. And I can actually go and drill into this particular culprit of what's going on here. Here we can see we do have some packet loss. We have that forwarding delay causing a problem, and we can see that our culprit here is Comcast in Seattle, Washington. So again, the point of this is that I'm going over the internet with these paths, and how do I determine where the problem really resides? So it's a quicker isolation, or quicker getting to the problem, root cause analysis to get to the problem, in order to take this information and fix the problem in a much more rapid fashion. And so those are some of the insights we're gaining using a technology like this we bought from Thousand Eyes to basically give that full visibility of what's happening within the environment.